This is going to be a discussion of 3 different movie productions that were very chaotic and crazy, problematic in some ways. And this was suggested to me in the comments of one of my videos, and I thought it was a good idea. So I'm going to be talking about 3 movies, like I said, and I could have included more, but these are just the 3 that I chose because, for one, I've seen all of these movies, and even though there were some other movies I had seen that were listed, I guess, as problematic on certain sites that I went to when I was researching for this video, these are my 3 favorites, I guess. Overall, I would say it is very hot where I live right now, and I have the AC turned off because I don't want it to make a noise. But if I sound like I'm sweating, girl, if I sound like I'm out of breath, it's just because I'm hot as hell. So I apologize if I sound weird or anything like that. I'm just gonna try to not think about it too much. I don't do well with the heat. I prefer a cooler temp. But anyway, I'm trying not to complain about it because it's summer and I should be enjoying the weather. But yeah, anyway, and I wanted to say thank you to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. If you are not subscribed, please do so. I would greatly appreciate it. And we are just going to get into the first movie, which is probably, it's not my favorite movie of all time, but it is up there. I love this movie so much, and it does kind of break my heart a little bit that the production was so problematic, but I love this movie. I grew up with it. I've watched it so many times, and that is the iconic Wizard of Oz. This movie was released all the way back in 1939, a long ass time ago, and it was originally set to be directed by Norman Taurog, but he was replaced by Richard Thorpe after filming several Technicolor tests. And Richard shot about 2 weeks worth of footage before he was also replaced. And his footage is the only known footage of Buddy Witch of the West was supposed to disappear from Munchkinland in a burst of smoke and fire. To do this, she had to step on a certain part of the road and descend on an elevator. After several takes, the pyrotechnics ignited too soon, and she was seriously burned on the face and hand. Later, her stunt double, Betty Dango, was badly injured while riding on wires the witch's smoke-spitting broomstick. The prop exploded, and this sent her to the hospital for 11 days and left her with permanent scars. Also, because at this time there was no such thing as synthetic fur, in order to make the lion costume look real, an actual lion hair was used, and because it was impossible to find duplicate lion hides with identical colorations and patterns, Cowardly Lion actor Bert Lahr wore one costume primarily through filming. Given the costume's weight and the fact that he was filming under intensely hot lights, according to cinematographer Harold Rawson, other actors were actually fainting from these lights, even the ones that weren't wearing this giant ass costume. So Bert really went through it in this costume, and he at the end of each day of shooting, they would have to put the costume into an industrial drying bin to dry it from all the sweat. And a fun fact about this costume, it actually sold at an auction in 2014 for $3 million. Many people like to point fingers at the dead Munchkin rumor that floated around for years as one of the Wizard of Oz famous disasters. And for those of you who don't know about this, apparently you could spot a dead Munchkin. It's not funny, but it's like ridiculous. So apparently you can spot a dead Munchkin in the background of We're Off to See the Wizard musical number. However, eventually the record was set straight, and this object was identified as a bird, and I think it was a prop bird. I don't know for sure. However, unfortunately, the actors who played the Munchkins were not paid very well. There were about 135 actors who played these roles, and yeah, they weren't paid very well, which is fucked up. And there was a lot, so that's pretty much it. There was a lot of shit going on. Like I said, this is one of my favorite movies ever, but I know it was super problematic. And the final cost of the film was about $2.7 million. It was one of the most expensive pictures ever made at the time. And when it was originally released, it actually didn't make that much money. It made about $3 million. So basically what it cost to make the movie, they made back, which is not a success, obviously. It was re-released in 1949 and became profitable after that and gained more attention over time to eventually become the classic movie we all know it as today. And as far as I could find, as far as the profit that it's made over time as of today, because it's made a ton of money, it apparently has made about $25 million in profit, which is adjusted to inflation as of today. So yeah, that is a Wizard of Oz craziness, shenanigans, all that. And I also just want to say, Toto is the cutest dog I've ever seen in my life, and he is a Karen Terrier. And ever since I've watched this movie, I've wanted a Karen Terrier. I will get one of those dogs eventually. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next film, which is The Crow. Now, there's actually a Crow remake coming out pretty soon, starring Bill Skarsgård and FKA Twigs, and I have to say, I'm skeptical. It looks pretty bad, and I like the original Crow a lot, and I just don't think it should be remade, so I probably won't be seeing it, although I am kind of curious to see how it turns out. So, The Crow was released in 1994 and directed by Alex Proyas. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing anything wrong, you guys. I'm really bad with that kind of stuff. And it was based on the 1989 comic book series by James O'Barr. Originally River Phoenix and Christian Slater were in contention to play the lead role of Eric Draven, but the part ended up going to Brandon Lee, who is the son of legendary martial artist and actor Bruce Lee. He dropped 20 pounds for the role and worked very closely with the crew during the shooting of the film. He choreographed his action sequences, he performed most of his stunts, and he also removed a subplot of the film due to its Asian stereotyping. There was a number of accidents on set, starting off on the very first day of filming when a carpenter who was working was severely burned on his face, chest, and arms when live power lines hit the crane he was working on. Later that day, the same day, an equipment truck for the production mysteriously caught on fire. Amongst other mishaps, a construction worker slipped and drove a screwdriver through his hand. A drive-by shooting occurred not far from the shooting location in downtown Wilmington, not Willingham. A disgruntled sculptor who had worked on the set for several days apparently went berserk on the back lot and drove his car through the studio's plaster shop. And on March 13th, a storm destroyed the gross sets as well as another set that was being used by Ethan and Joel Cohen. And that was on the same filming lot. So this film and The Wizard of Oz came to my mind right off the bat when I was thinking of movies to include in this video, because I saw this movie when I was younger, and when I learned about the backstory, I was shook. So let's get into more of what happened and why this film is so infamous in the way it is today. So on March 31st, on the set in Wilmington, is it Wilmington? Yeah, Wilmington, North Carolina, during a particular scene, Brandon Lee's character was shot by the character Fun Boy, played by Michael Massey. The gun was supposed to be loaded with blank ammunition, but during a second take, a failure resulted in tragedy. Apparently, the production company had sent the firearm specialist home early, so the responsibility for the guns was given to a prop assistant who was unaware of the role for inspecting all firearms before and after handling. Therefore, the barrel was not checked for obstructions when the time came to load it with the blank rounds. Since the bullet from the dummy round was already trapped in the barrel, this caused the bullet to be fired with virtually the same force as if the gun had been loaded with a live round, and it struck Brandon Lee in the abdomen, mortally wounding him. 2 arteries were immediately severed. He collapsed and was immediately rushed to the hospital. Surgery was done for 6 hours, but unfortunately to no avail. When he died, he was only 28 years old, and he passed away on March 31st of 1993. And I mentioned the release date was in 1994, but this was while they were shooting in 1993. And his death is also a very eerie situation because it kind of is life imitating art, since the scene that killed him was supposed to be the scene that his character died in. And the actor Michael Massey, who accidentally killed him, was obviously very traumatized after this happened, and he took about a year off of acting, moved back to New York City, and he said, quote, "I didn't do anything. I didn't work. What happened to Brandon was a tragic accident. I don't think you ever get over something like that, and I can only imagine what this guy went through. Like, that is so fucked up." And he did end up acting again, but unfortunately passed away in 2016 at the age of 61. After Brandon's death, clearly the producers and the director were faced with the decision of whether or not to continue with filming, and Brandon had completed most of his scenes sad to think about this film to me, and I've seen it only a couple times, even though I really like it, because I find it very hard to watch given the circumstances. It's so upsetting to think about, and Brandon Lee was gone far, far too soon. He had his whole life ahead of him. He was so young. He was 28 years old. That's crazy. And he was engaged to be married at the time. It's just awful. It's so awful. So rest in peace to Brandon Lee. Also, I'm sure a lot of you know about the whole situation with Alec Baldwin that happened in 2021 on the set of Rust, with the mishap involving the gun that ended up killing someone. And it's so crazy to think that that happened again. Like, basically the same exact situation happened again years and years later. So that is The Crow. And like I said, I really like all these movies, so if you haven't seen any of them, I highly recommend them. They're all very different. And now we're gonna get into the last one, which is Apocalypse Now. So this movie's crazy. It was released in 1979, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Originally, George Lucas was set to direct the film, and it was loosely inspired by the 1899 novella Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, with the setting changing from late 19th century Congo to the Vietnam War. So it was 19th century Congo in the book and then changed to Vietnam War in the movie. The film has 4 cuts total, with the theatrical release being 153 minutes long. The Apocalypse Now Redux is a 2001 extended version that adds 49 minutes. That was cut from the theatrical release. Apocalypse Now Final Cut is a 4K restoration from original negatives and a new cut. And a new cut by Coppola that runs 183 minutes. And finally, there is a 5-hour rough version, which some consider to be the Holy Grail. The production began in 1976, and it originally had a budget of $12 million, which turned into $30 million by the time everything was said and done. The film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in 1979, where it was met with overwhelming praise and awarded the Palme d'Or, which is the highest prize awarded at the festival. The production began in 1976, like I said, in the Philippines, and almost immediately was off to a rough start, just like The Crow. 2 weeks into filming, Francis Ford Coppola hired Harvey Keitel, who was set to play the main character, Captain Benjamin L. Willard, in the film, and he was replaced by Martin Sheen, who ended up playing the role, and he did an amazing job, by the way. Harvey already filmed a lot of material, so all of these scenes needed to be reshot. In May 1976, 2 months after filming, began a typhoon in the Philippines, which led to a 3-month hiatus. Then in March 1977, after a year of off-again, on-again filming, lead actor Martin Sheen had a heart attack that he later attributed to stress. At the time, it was described as a heat stroke to prevent worrying and interference from UA executives and insurance companies. One of the biggest stressors for Coppola and the crew was the fact that a real civil war was being waged not far from the set of the film. Most of the military equipment for the film had been loaned to the production by Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos, who would frequently call his helicopters and equipment away from the set to do battle with communist insurgents nearby. This caused numerous lengthy production delays and inspired fear in much of the on-set personnel. Another frightening occurrence that resulted in a massive delay was when it was discovered that some of the dead body props brought to the set were actually real human remains. That shit is insane. This apparently led to a police investigation and the crew's passports being temporarily confiscated, and the bodies were then taken away by soldiers. In one scene, a water buffalo was slaughtered with a machete for the cinematic scene, was an American production subject to American animal cruelty laws. Such scenes filmed in the Philippines were not monitored. The American Humane Association gave the film an unacceptable, in quotes, rating, and Coppola would later say the animals were part of the production deal. So I do not fuck with that at all. I am a huge animal lover. I'm a vegetarian. Yeah, that's not cool, and I did not know that before I started doing my research for this. Not cool. Not cool at all. Apparently, many of the cast and crew members were constantly drinking and doing drugs during the shoot as well. And the director, Francis Ford Coppola, had so much stress and paranoia due to the fact that he was investing tons of his own money into the film, and he ended up having an epileptic seizure on set and suffered a nervous breakdown that took him weeks to recover from. So now we're gonna get into the Marlon Brando craziness. Marlon Brando was a wild mother effer, okay? He also was in a movie called The Island of Dr. Moreau, which was on some of the lists I looked at for this video because apparently he was just so difficult on that set as well. He played the main villain in the film, who was named Colonel Walter Kurtz, and he arrived on set drunk, overweight, and completely unprepared. Coppola was forced to put the production on hold for days while he reimagined the character for Kurtz and gave Marlon Brando all the information that he already should have had. He did not read the script and ended up looking completely different from what the character was supposed to look like, so they had to change his entire outfit and everything because of Marlon Brando's weight and appearance. He ended up being bald and wearing like this giant black cape thing that basically just covered his entire body. There was a documentary actually that was made about the production of this movie called Heart of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse, and this was released in 1991, and it went into depth about the production, like I said, and Francis Ford Coppola's wife Eleanor was actually one of the directors of the film. When Apocalypse Now was released, it